If you're like me and you already have all of the available fighters, it's time to check out some custom fighters. And today, the Mandalorian. Okay, it's been a long time coming. I don't know why I didn't start with the Mandalorian. As most people know, in the custom scene for Unmatched, he is the number one, like absolutely number one rated unmatched unofficial fighter. So I think it's about time that I showed him off here. So I quickly want to go over the miniatures here because I actually have two of them. So the Mandalorian was actually the first ever unofficial fighter I made. So the deck is exactly how I got it, same with the health dials. I did end up changing the miniature here. I got this one on Etsy. Here is that person's shop. I don't mind the pose. I think the pose is really good. If you noticed, actually, I ended up breaking. I've had this one for quite a while, so it's definitely seen some damage. And then I also have, let's see, the other one here. I also have the Grogu that goes with it. I definitely like the modeling and posing of these two a lot better. And they don't look too bad in a closed vacuum. But once you bring in another fighter here, another outlaw, you can just see how, actually he's missing his base. You can see how much bigger he is. He's just almost a little unproportional, not too crazy. But the biggest thing is you'll notice is the base is not quite as thick as it needs to be. And it's not the right size. It's just slightly too small. And it's just not as thick. It's not like crazy, but it's just enough where it almost doesn't look right. Especially the printing material they used is way too bright. So if they ever update their Etsy store with this model and make it more like the Unmatched fighters, I think I might replace it again. But I just wanted to show off these guys because this is the one that I believe most people have, because it's once you search miniature for Unmatched, these two show up all the time. So let's go look at what I used to replace them. I got them from the Meeplesmith, as always. This is our Mandalorian from the Meeplesmith. And let's bring in Robin Hood here again. You can see, once again, yes, a little bit taller, but I think he's not as inflated looking, if that makes sense. And the bases are the exact same size, same thickness and everything. You can see it's just a lot more closer to that. He's definitely still, I guess, a little bit lighter than I would prefer him to be. You can just throw a dark wash on him and he'll look just like Robin Hood. Robin Hood is very dark washed. And you will see with all my Mandalorians, just so somehow happens, I always break the gun. You can see I glued it back on there, but it's just that that long pole always breaks on me. But yeah, if we look at the details here, he looks fantastic. The Meeplesmith always does a great job. I just prefer the Etsy posing a little bit better, but I think this one fits better in Unmatched, especially when in gameplay. So let's also look at Grogu here. This is also before I was making the sidekick tokens, so I ended up doing a miniature. I kind of wish I had both so you could choose. With new players, this kind of always makes them think that Grogu was a hero, so it's kind of hard to know who to focus on. But with experienced players, or most players you will be playing with anyways, they'll understand this is a sidekick. But yeah, once again, just the smallest little details, looks great. If I compare him to the Etsy one is quite a bit fatter and chunkier. So I actually like this Grogu a lot better. Even the posing with his hand up matches, you'll see his cards from the deck. So yeah, and then we can look at their health dials here. These ones I'm definitely embarrassed about. I'm gonna replace them at some point, but I thought I might show you what it looks like when you make it for the first time, before I kind of figured out what looks good or how everything works. These guys are not a thick cardboard. They're almost like paper. So they're super thin if we compare them to the Unmatched one. You can just see how thin and flimsy these are. Also, they don't stay very well because the space in between the plastic insert here is a lot tighter. It's looser than it needs to be tighter. You can see it just kind of slides around real easy, like almost off the axis as well. And then also when I made the artwork for the front of here, I definitely want to redo it. If you can see, it's just a metal sheen with the Mandalorian logo or the Bounty Hunter logo, and then his name there. In the back, I'm a little bit embarrassed to buy. Just some fan art I found online. I thought it looked cool, but once again, it's weird having it unmatched. And then here's Grogu's, and of course, the artwork I chose just punches right through his face. Definitely like Grogu's a lot more. I think I might make the same thing for the Mandalorian, but they do not look like they're on the same team. Also, the random blue in the background, I was trying to match the blue that's on here. So yeah, definitely it takes practice, guys. That's why I made these videos to try to help everyone else get as far along with their custom fighters as I am. So maybe I'll make an update whenever I get these updated, but just wanted to show you what it looks like when you start making them for the first time. And plus, I just haven't replaced them because I almost have a little bit of nostalgia for my first unmatched custom fighter. So yeah, let's take a look at the actual deck here, what we actually came here for. This is our hero card for the Mandalorian. He's a ranged fighter with 14 health. And then he has the sidekick, the Child, who is also ranged with 5 health. And his special ability is, when the Mandalorian plays to defend, add 1 to that card's value for each Beskar armor card in your discard pile. If you draw any Beskar armor cards to start the game, reshuffle and draw again. Basically, just saying when you start the game, you draw your 5 cards. If there's Beskar, you need to reshuffle the deck and draw again. I end up just putting the Beskar back in the deck and just shuffle the deck. That way I don't have to keep drawing 5 cards, because sometimes you just keep drawing those Beskars and keep having to shuffle the whole deck. It kind of gets annoying. But yeah, so that is his ability there. I do want to point out for people who don't know this deck very well, there are 2 Beskar armors in the deck. So basically, he starts out with his crappy armor like you do see in the TV show, and then as the game goes on, he upgrades to his nice shiny Beskar. So he can have basically a maximum of +2 to all his defense. That's kind of what his special thing to his deck is. So let's take a look at his deck, and this is the original card back. Once again, I did not change it. I might change it. I think it's kind of ugly. I don't know if it matches the theme of Unmatched as much as I would want to, but I think it's nostalgic for a lot of people. They also did change the logo up here. It says unofficial Unmatched. And then the other thing that always has bugged me is there is black text, like the Star Wars text, behind the text where it says Mando and the Child. I don't know if they put that there or that was in the wallpaper that they use as the background, but it's always bugged me. Also, this white border is a little too thick. You know what? Let me actually grab a card here from Robin Hood's deck, and we can kind of compare a little bit. You can kind of see what I mean. So this is Unmatched, and this is the custom one. Obviously, we know that. So if you notice, the Unmatched one goes all the way to the border. Also, they don't have a white border. So it's just kind of like, it feels like this card's a little shrunk whenever you compare it to the normal ones. And then we can quickly grab a card from another custom deck we have. Actually, you know what? I'll give you a little sneak peek on the next video. This is the one for the Joker. So if you compare all 3 of these 2 look like they're from the same game. This one doesn't quite look like that. So you can kind of see this is for the Joker, one of my favorite card backs. So yeah, let's take a look at the deck now that I'm done airing all my complaints and we're halfway through the video. Okay, so this is our first card here for Mando, aka the Mandalorian, aka Din Djarin. He has an attack of 4 with a boost of 4, and he has 1 copy of this, and This Is the Way. During combat, if the child is still alive, the value of this card is 7. After combat, move the Mandalorian up to 4 spaces. So, a good big punch early on in the game. You can't save it for the final punch. Because then the child might be dead, but there's only 1 card of that in the deck. And then we have an attack of 3 for Mando, boost of 2, and then 3 copies in the deck. I can bring you in warm. After combat, if you won the combat, choose 1 effect, then shuffle your deck. Oof. Man, I cannot stop hitting this tripod. Search your deck for any card and add it to your hand. Draw 4 cards, keep 2, and return the other 2 to the deck. So usually what I end up using this card for is to search my deck for those Beskar armors so I can get that additional defense early on. So next up, we have an attack of 2 for Mando, boost of 3, 4 copies, quick draw. After combat, gain 1 action. This is my favorite card in the deck. I don't know why it's super thematic to me. I just love that he can just like shoot his blaster multiple times. If you have 3 of these in your hand, you shoot, 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 and then you still have 2 actions. So just a very fun card. Whenever I first saw this deck, I thought this would be so overpowered, but it's actually not, because a lot of times your opponent can kind of tell that you're just trying to ping at them and they won't defend. Yeah. So last in the attacks here, we have an attack of 3, boost of 2 for Mando, and there's 1 copy, and this is Pulse Shock. This card may only be used to attack an adjacent fighter. Then after combat, the player controlling the opposing fighter loses 1 action next turn. So you kind of shock them and, stop them from moving as much next turn. But a lot of times people can see this one coming, and this is the one they want to feint because it literally cuts their turn in half next turn. So if Mando's ever coming up right next to you, he might be using this Pulse Shock. So definitely easy to figure out that it's coming. And then we have the defense cards for Mando. This is the Beskar armor we were talking about before. It is a defense of 3, no boost value, with 2 copies. And it is after combat, if the child is still alive, draw 1 card. So I do want to point out real fast a fun little smart thing that they did. This has a no boost value, so you can't discard it and put in your discard for that, because this one says it's for every card in your discard pile. So you can't boost it and just throw it away to get that +1. You have to spend it. So it's a little bit more interesting that you have to use it to defend to add it to your armor pile. And then for me, usually I just end up putting it underneath my card here, right there. So you can kind of see how many Beskars I have. And at the end of the turn, I do that. So for me, that's what I just end up doing. That's more of a home rule, just a fun little tip. Okay, so moving on, we have our versatile cards here. This is for any, so both him and Grogu can use it. And it is a value of 2, boost of 2 with 3 copies. It's feint, cancel all effects on your opponent's card. Everybody knows this one. It is classic. I'm just kind of sad that the artwork doesn't have that, double shifting person artwork. And then next we have Regroup, another classic for Unmatched. It is an any card with 1 value, versatile, 2 boost, 3 copies. After combat, draw 1 card. If you won the combat, draw 2 cards instead. Then we have Snipe. I believe Robin Hood has this, or a few other people. I feel like this card is familiar as well. And this is an any, a 3 versatile with 1 boost, 2 copies. After combat, draw 1 card. So you'll kind of actually notice he has a lot of card draw and a lot of cycling. So he definitely feels like he never runs out of utility to attack with. And then we have a versatile of 3 for any, and this is another Unmatched classic with a 1 boost, 2 copies. It's dash. After combat, move your fighter up to 3 spaces. And then lastly here, we have our schemes before we move on to the child here. And all the schemes are 1 copies. So these are all kind of his gadgets that he has in his utility. So this is for Mando, a scheme, a boost of 2, 1 copy. The Whistling Birds. The Mandalorian deals 2 damage to all opposing fighters he can attack. So by that, what that means is anybody that's in his zone or adjacent to him, because he's a ranged fighter. And then we have Mando's Flamethrower, a scheme with 2 boost, 1 copy. And it is choose a fighter. The Mandalorian can attack, which is once again in his zone or adjacent. Deal 2 damage to that fighter. If you are adjacent to that fighter, you may move that fighter up to 3 spaces. So a free 2 damage and then pushing them away if they are too close to you. So great for you if you're kind of ending your turn adjacent to an opponent. You can push them away so they have to move back up to you if they're melee. And then we have his Cable Shot, a 2 boost scheme with 1 copy. Choose a fighter the Mandalorian can attack, once again, in his zone or adjacent. Move that fighter adjacent to the Mandalorian and deal 2 damage to that fighter. So easy to grab him and pull him nice and close. And it's good to put with that with a Pulse Shot, because you pull him up there, deal 2 damage to him, and then, shock him so he loses a turn. Or not a turn, but an action. And then we have Rising Phoenix. Place the Mandalorian in any space. If the child is still alive, draw 1 card. If the child was adjacent to the Mandalorian before playing this card, you may also place the child in any space adjacent to the Mandalorian's new space. So definitely a big handful. This is always a card that when people play it, they're like, man, I feel like I can do so much stuff. I get a card, I move people around. It's just a lot of fun to play this card. And then lastly here, we have the only cards that the child are specific to. And it is a 2 versatile with 4 boost, and it has 3 copies, and it says force powers. During combat, move the opposing fighter up to 1 space. If the child is no longer in that fighter's range, so good for melee, or if you're teetering on a zone there for ranged, that prevent all damage. So it's good for pushing away a melee fighter so that he can't beat up the little guy here. And then after combat, choose one effect. The Mandalorian recovers 2 health, or the child recovers 2 health. So yeah, so that kind of brings up the question here, is that's kind of the only thing the child is meant for. He only has 5 health, so he's not super helpful. He's just a good healing thing, so he can potentially heal Mando up to 6 health. That's kind of all the healing Mando has. But then he does have all these ennies, which are feints and regroups and dashes. So yeah, let's take a look at my final thoughts before I start rambling about those cards. Okay, so that's the Mandalorian, the #1 best rated unmatched fighter for customs. So yeah, I definitely like him. I feel like he's both one of the coolest fighters and one of the most bland. I don't know why he feels so bland to me. Yeah, I love that he has a lot of utility and a lot of like card draw, so he always feels like he has something he can do. He's prepared for any situation. And then the child here just kind of, feels like he can't do much. He's good for healing. He's good for preventing damage, but he's just a little boring to me. Especially with 5 health, he's super easy to kill like early on, especially like with Medusa. So you can just keep pinging him every turn and he's dead. So yeah, but I had to I had to make a video about these guys just because of how well rated they are. I do have a little bit of nostalgia whenever I play him because he is, of course, the first unmatched fighter that I made as a custom. I feel like that's going to be for most people there. So yeah, I definitely recommend him. He's like a main staple to me, honestly. When I was looking through my custom fighters to review, when I saw him, I kind of forgot he was a custom fighter because he just feels so ingrained in Unmatched. So yeah, let's see how to make him. Alrighty, so if you wanted to make this fighter for yourself, I'm going to leave some links for all the components that I used to make them. These 2 miniatures here are the ones from the Meeplesmith, the meeplesmith.com. They also have an eBay page if that's more comfortable for you. That's where you can get these 2 models here. But if you actually liked the Etsy ones better, and you're willing to overlook the weird coloring that they have, I'll also leave a link for their Etsy page so you can get these ones if you prefer them more. And then next up here are their health dials. These are the original ones that I used, but I'm going to leave the links for the better components for you to print them off. All you have to do is get the cardboard punch out from Board Games Maker. I can never get that one right. Board Games Maker. You can get the cardboard punch out, and then you just got to cut out this little window and punch through the middle. I will leave the artwork I used for these guys, even though they're slightly cringy. But I will leave the links, so you just got to drag and drop, and then when you get them, just cut that little window out and punch through the middle, and then you're good to go. And these little plastic inserts here are the extra ones I got from Unmatched. I'm not quite sure where to get those if you want extras, but if I ever do find out, I'll let you know. And then lastly here, the deck for the Mandalorian. All the text and art and everything will all be from unmatched.decks. I have not changed anything here. If I do update the card back, I'll update the link in the description with that. But here is our creator. It's just a random string of letters. Maybe it means something to him, but that is him. So you can get those from there. If you want to get the cards printed, that is also boardgamesmaker.com, so you can get all these printed. I'll leave the link for the exact cardstock and finish that I used. So anyways, I gotta go. My toast is burning.